Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mack, John McMullen, and we are joined right now by the great Les Bowen, who joins us here on the show. Les, welcome into the show, man. How you doing in this August 26th morning?
I am great, Zander and John. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Les. It's cut down day. You've been through a lot of these over the years, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to get you on today because, boy, man, have you ever seen something like this in August? We're at 5 trades so far with potentially more to come. 2 things. Why the shift so dramatic this year, and what do you think it says about this particular team?
Oh, good questions. I thought about the trades a lot. Basically, the more significant ones, I think, lately have been to undo maybe mistakes that they made in the offseason in trying to compile the roster. They thought Kendall Lamb, I think, was going to be the swing tackle, and he looks like he's done. But they moved on from that and got Fred Johnson back. And I think they were really hoping with, Jalen Hurts has a big contract now. And I think they were really hoping to get by without paying a lot of money at the quarterback position other than to Jalen Hurts. And they were thinking, with Tanner McKee and Kyle McCord, they would have a very minimal outlay there. But McCord, as you saw against the Jets, was nowhere near somebody you could put in a regular season NFL game. And I don't know that he ever will be. There's some real drawbacks there with his pocket movement and accuracy and so on. But I think the good thing about Howie Roseman these days is that he moves on from things. He quickly went out and got Sam Howell, who is basically the same guy as Kenny Pickett, the quarterback that he didn't bring back, previously. So, those trades I see as trying to, okay, we tried something, and it didn't work, and let's go back to more or less what we had before. Turns out he probably could have gotten Kenny Pickett himself back if he wanted to, because Kenny got traded yesterday.
Yes.
And actually, that would have made more sense.
That made much more sense.
Why not? But that's not how it worked out. But yeah, the other stuff, John Mechie was an interesting trade they made. He's been linked with the Eagles so many times over the last few years. I think that was like a value acquisition where they didn't really have a great need, especially at the time. If you remember, Johnny Wilson wasn't injured yet when they did.
Yep. Yeah.
So they didn't have a great need.
Yeah, that one didn't. I said at the time, that one didn't make sense to me at all. Other than they just.
Well, I think they really like him.
Yeah.
I think and who knows if they're right or wrong, but I think they think he's at least their 4th best on the roster, and maybe even depending on how Dotson does, their 3rd best. So it's. Those all make sense, but it's been. To sum up real quickly, I think we all knew the roster wasn't going to be what it was at the end of last season because nobody has a roster like that. There was a lot of serendipity that went into that. They had no idea Zach Bond was going to be Zach Bond, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
and the roster did suffer some hits in the offseason. And I think they're trying to mitigate that as much as they can and get it back to where they're comfortable with the depth.
Yeah, I think they're going to try and do that. They got till 4 p.m. today to get down to the initial 53. Les, following now, all of training camp is done in the rearview mirror, and now 3 preseason games in the rearview mirror. Based on what you've consumed, you've read, and you've watched, what's the biggest weakness on this team? Where do they have to improve? They obviously have some positions on that defensive side that they're trying to bolster. What do you think is going to be the biggest concern for this team this year?
Well, my hobby horse is edge rush. I keep coming back to that. I do not like where they are with the edge rushers. I would not be shocked if there's an edge rusher out there, or at least on the roster by the opener, that isn't here right now. Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt finished the season really, really well. I think in the middle of the season, if you had told anybody that those two guys were going to be the Eagles' starting edge rushers the next season, I think people would have passed out of shock. I mean,
including me, Les. I've been saying it for months. I can't believe how he's going into a season with this edge rushing room.
You know, they finished up great. They have great potential, but they have a very short resume, both of them. And I hope they do great, and I hope they stay healthy, because there's nothing behind them, really. And I was kind of on I know financially it would have made no sense, blah, 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 blah. But the Trey Hendrickson bandwagon, before the Bengals finally resolved that yesterday, I just think they needed to make a bigger move there. And they didn't see it, or they didn't want to do it. I hope that doesn't come back to bite them. They are going to be really good at defensive tackle, and maybe that will, maybe the rush up the middle will mitigate, and maybe the two starters will continue to develop into superstars and won't ever get hurt. But not much there that I can see.
How big of a move would you be willing to make? Me and John have been talking about a potential. Now, I don't know how realistic it even is, but a guy like Trayvon Walker from the Jaguars is a 24-year-old guy who's got 2 double-digit sack seasons already. Maybe you have to depart with your first-round pick, which should presumably be in the last 7 picks of the draft. How big of a move do you think they would be willing to make? And then how big of a move would you be willing to make? There might be a difference there.
Well, I'd be willing to really do anything almost. I mean, what you said was spot on. I would do that. I would do Trayvon Walker for a first. I kind of think if Howie felt that way, Trayvon Walker would be here, but maybe I'm wrong. And maybe they need to see a few games or get somebody hurt before they come around to that sort of view. And maybe they can plug it up. Maybe there's somebody going to get cut here, or somebody who's going to be available for a 5th round pick or something that's going to make it good enough. You're not going to be – it's not going to be like last year. You're not going to have great players at every position. It just isn't feasible. It was kind of luck that it happened that way last year, and in the wake of winning a Super Bowl – everybody loves your talent, and, but you got to be good there. That's one of the key positions, I think, in the defense. And I don't know that they are.
I kind of took it as all these trades as saying, basically highlighting, Les, that, hey, you know what? The 90-man roster wasn't as good as it should have been this year.
Yeah.
Versus I saw Howie. Look, Howie is the best GM in the NFL. He deserves his flowers a lot of time. I was stunned how many people were lauding him for the Sam Howell and Fred Johnson trades. I'm like, to me, it highlights failures.
Oh, yeah.
Your point of the off season. In other words, give them his flowers when they're deserved. Plenty of opportunities for that. But these kinds of deals are not when you should be saying this is 3D chess or whatever.
No, it's just that I think he has gained. One of the things that he has learned over the years is don't sit on a mistake.
Yeah, that's very valuable.
They used to do that, and he's not doing it anymore. So I give him credit for that. But yeah, you're right. They were not the moves the trajectory they envisioned at these positions wasn't what happened. So they ended up having to undo some things that they tried to do. And I kind of wonder if Isaiah Rodgers wasn't somebody that they will regret moving on from. I think Howie tried to be the opposite of what he was after the Super Bowl 52, when he held on to people and, didn't turn the roster over and so on and so forth, and came to regret it because there were people in decline. But, this year, this offseason, particularly on Vic Fangio's defense, he really moved on from some folks. And, you know, he gave Vic he put a lot on Vic's plate. I mean,
they
he
trust
really
Vic.
did.
They trust Vic. Sometimes I get the thought process. I get the feeling, the thought process in the organization is Vic will figure it out a little bit too much.
And I wonder how much Vic appreciates that.
Yeah, I mean, who was a bigger reason the Eagles won the Super Bowl and dominated it last year? I mean, the defense didn't let them cross midfield for 10 drives, for crying out loud. And then they gut it and say, all right, run it back. But I don't know. He might not be too happy.
Exactly. That's exactly right, Zander. And it took a while for that defense to get its feet under it last year. Of course, Vic was new then. And I just wonder, with all the changes, if it will take a while this year. And we have, you know, it looks like Jacorian Bennett isn't quite comfortable enough to be a starting corner. So you're going to start out with Adoree Jackson, who's a veteran guy who's sort of okay. And you got a lot of uncertainty going on the defense going into the opener.
You know how it works. And cut down day, you're seeing all the national guys. You know, you'll see little tweaks of, hey, Kyle McCord might get picked up on waivers because Joel Siegel's doing his job. And one of those that just came out is a name to watch, Les Bowen, is Zadarius Smith. Multiple teams have checked in on Zadarius, who very good player for a very long time, older, obviously would step in as the oldest player on the Eagles defense. Still could probably rush the passer coming off the couch better than the people we're talking about. That
name has crossed my mind. You know, that name has crossed my mind. How did he look for Detroit last year?
He had 9 sacks, I believe,
Yeah.
last year. So, I mean,
I wouldn't oppose that at all. You never know with a guy like that whether you're getting what he did last year or if that was the last gasp or something.
Yeah.
Who was that guy several years ago, John, that had been a great player for the
Robert Quinn?
That's one of them.
Yeah.
But even before him, the guy who had played for Washington for years and years and was like,
Ryan Kerrigan.
Ryan Kerrigan. History is littered with those names too. So, I don't know, but I do like Zadarius Smith from what I know of him and what I've seen of him. So that would be fine with me. Absolutely.
Well, to your point about Ryan Kerrigan and mine about Robert Quinn, Robert Quinn, who was a trade pickup at the trade deadline, he was coming off a 19 sack season. And he just had nothing left. That was it.
Like a pitcher that just loses his fastball or something.
Yeah. It was amazing. Good guy too, but just had nothing left. It's amazing.
And they were excited about Kerrigan. Lane Johnson had some memorable battles against him over the years, and he just had nothing. He was just there.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens quick in this league. It definitely does. It's a fast moving league. The 53 overall, Darius Cooper, you know how it works with undrafted free agents. I think he's the story for a lot of people. Yeah. Played very well in the preseason, made some splash plays. I think people are excited by him. You know how GMs are. Sometimes they like to keep undrafted guys to say, hey, look who I found.
Yeah.
Those kinds of stories interest you the most, or is it, the legitimate battles? It's, do you keep Kaylee Ringo? What do you do with punt returner? Because you don't want to waste Cooper DeJean. Do you have to keep Anaya Smith? Do you have to keep which interests Les Bowen the most?
The latter a little bit more. During camp, I'm more interested in the former, the guys that come out of nowhere. But you see that every year, and you kind of take it with a grain of salt after a while. Although I do like Darius Cooper, and I definitely hope they put him on the 53. But the 53 isn't what it used to be. Now that there's a zillion people on the practice squad, and anybody's grandfather can be on the practice squad. You don't have to be a young player. It's chaos. I mean, they want to get out of one of the worst things the PA, the Players Association, failed to recognize in all of this when they were agreeing to all this stuff is this business now of stashing guys that you don't want on the roster week one because they're vested vets, and you have to pay the whole salary. Now that there's a gigantic practice squad, you'll see that. You'll see the Eagles. The Eagles will cut somebody today that you're like, oh, my God. But they know they can get him onto the practice squad, and they don't want to pay his salary. It might be A.J. Dillon. That's a real workaround for teams. And so
might be, it might be the long snapper. They did that with Rick Lobato one year.
It's just ridiculous. The 53 on Tuesday is just almost useless. I mean, it doesn't mean that much. But I really like getting back to what we were talking about. Darius Cooper, I would keep him ahead of Ainias Smith. I really would. Ainias looked okay. You were out there every day. I wasn't, but from what I saw and what I read,
he just drops too many drops. He's not comfortable as a punt returner. He's a pretty good punt returner if he secures the ball.
Catch the ball, and this is his second year. I grade on that. I mean, you want to see, guy was a marginal player as a rookie. You want to see that big step up, and it looked for a minute there in the preseason like he was making that step. Perhaps he had that nice. His best moment, and Kyle McCord's best moment, was that 9-yard slant, I guess. Touchdown. But I'd rather take a chance on Darius Cooper, frankly, and I don't think anybody's going to pick up. If they do pick up Ainias Smith, bon voyage. You have to keep him on your roster if you pick him up. So,
do you think Howie's a little bit too cognizant or worried about guys getting through waivers? Because Eli Ricks is going to get waived. He got 2+ years over a pick-6 interception in Baltimore against a 4th-string cornerback. I mean, bottom line, he got 2+ years out. He's almost vested, because now you get vested after 3 years.
I thought he was a good athlete and maybe a good special teams guy, they felt, but I never saw him do anything other than what you just mentioned at corner. That's a good point. They get their people that they like, and it's sometimes it's a position coach or a coordinator who really likes a guy, that's a good point, John.
Quarterback too. I want to talk about McCord, because I'm with you 100%. He did not look ready. He doesn't look ready, Les. But at some point also, like I'm not super thrilled about the Sam Howell trade from the perspective of, look, I think Tanner's going to be healthy by week 3, or worst case scenario, week 4. He's the backup. You're very comfortable with that. And then all of a sudden Sam reverts to being the third team. So I get it. You got a little bit of consternation for week 1, week 2, but let's face it, Jalen Hurts is very durable. Very smart player. Plays the game in a very smart fashion. He's going to make it through. I'm gambling. You can get hurt stepping off the curb. Anybody can get hurt at any time. But the Eagles will be the person. You can't legislate that stuff. So why are you trying to legislate it? I'd rather have the young quarterback, unless you think he's got nothing. I'd rather
think he's got nothing
behind the scenes.
I
understand.
Saw him in practice more than I did, but
it wasn't
in the
great.
games. I just thought, this is a guy. This is a total whiff. And I'm sure he's a great young man. He's a local kid. I don't want to. I don't want to say that.
Prep, South Jersey. But
I didn't see he couldn't move around the pocket. His passes, he was 42% or something like that. There were some drops, but a lot of balls thrown behind people. Maybe he wasn't getting the reps in practice that he needed to be comfortable. I don't know, but I didn't see anything there. I really didn't.
I respect that thought process. If you think he can't play, that's fine. Then it becomes a different conversation. So
But I thought the same thing about Clayton Thorson. He went right to Dallas as soon as the Eagles.
Yeah.
So.
Clayton, well, that's who I was about to say, because Les, you will know this. Clayton Thorson was not great as a rookie. Kyle McCord was better than Clayton Thorson was in training camp. He was better than Carson Strong. Remember Carson Strong? He just couldn't throw the ball. He was better than those guys. But to your point, yeah, he didn't have a very strong training camp. But, you know, Kevin O'Connell, which I bring up all the time because I think it's a great coach, a great quote.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of the guy in the NFL now when it comes to working with quarterbacks. So two things. One, you got to look at Sam Howell and said 4 months later, I don't want this guy. I'd rather have Carson Wentz.
That's troubling. Yeah.
That's a red flag. But the second part is what he said was organizations fail young quarterbacks more than young quarterbacks fail organizations. And to give up on the developmental aspect of it bothers me. But, you know, if you make that assessment and the kid can't play, can't play.
Yeah.
But I always have that ringing in my ear because I love that quote.
That's a very sobering thought, John. You're entirely right. And I did wonder when they made the trade if they thought they were trading for 2023 Sam Howell, who looked like Tom Brady against the Eagles. You know, he really did. That's second.
Yeah, we did. He had a great game. That's the best game. That's probably the best game he ever played.
Well, two of them. He really played really well in both games, and they scored over 30 points in both games against the Eagles. The second game was like lights out. It was like 397 yards or something he threw. Yeah. It was unbelievable. But he didn't do that against everybody, and it's a long time. A lot has happened since 2023. Last year he was in Seattle, only got in like 2 games. Then they passed him on to the Vikings. And as you said, the Vikings very resolutely moved on to Carson Wentz. I wrote something for PHLY about Carson Wentz is sort of the Eagles' Kevin Bacon. You know, it's like every time Carson Wentz moves, he doesn't ever go to like the Chargers or something. It's always related to the Eagles in some way. You know, I was standing in front of him in New Orleans last February. You know, he's watching the Eagles win another Super Bowl for Andy Reid, playing for Andy Reid. He was with the Rams. The Rams were key rivals of the Eagles. He was the starting quarterback in Washington for a year. Of course, before that, Frank Reich and the whole Sirianni Reich thing, you know, everywhere he goes, there's some huge Eagles connection. And of course, the Vikings, October 19th.
Well, you know who the Minnesota's quarterbacks coach is? Josh McCown.
Josh McCown. I'd forgotten that, but you're right. Yeah.
So, you know, he was Carson's backup for a short period. And played that playoff game against Seattle when he got the concussion.
Tore his groin
or hamstring. Was it a groin or hamstring? But he played well in that game, actually.
Well, he moved them between the
20s.
Couldn't score a touchdown. And they really should have won that game. But that's how it goes. It was not a real good team. But yeah, I wonder what's up with Sam Howell. If Sam Howell is still the same guy that was an intriguing – you knew he wasn't a franchise quarterback for the Commanders, but he was a guy you could put out there as a starter and have a chance to win.
He's got good experience too. Right? I mean, he played a whole season in 23.
But I'd rather have Kenny Pickett back, but hey, maybe.
But isn't there a new rule though that you can't trade back for a player you just traded for 2 years?
Yeah, I was thinking more if he got released.
I forgot released.
That's a good point. I had forgotten about that rule.
Isn't that the Reddick rule? Didn't they make that more recently? Yeah. Les, if the Eagles are successful this year, all right, and however you quantify that is up to you. How much different will it look than last year? Like we talked about last year, it was so different than the modern NFL. It was almost like a flashback to the early 2000s of like they're running the ball and they're playing scout. Very different than the modern game, which has become so pass heavy. If they are successful this year, will they be able to do it that way again? If not, how much different will it look and what might it look like in your eyes?
Oh, that's a good question, Zander. I wish I knew the answer. I kind of think, I'm inclined to think it'll look more like the Super Bowl where, you know, Kansas City just loaded up to make sure that Saquon Barkley didn't beat them. And the Eagles, with help from the defense, made enough plays in the passing game to run away with it. I think there's going to be a lot of stress on that passing game. I really think teams are going to say, we're not going to just watch Saquon Barkley romp through the secondary again. We didn't think a team could really do that, but they did it. So, now there's going to be 10 guys in the box or something, I think they're going to have to really make plays in the passing game. That's the way it looks to me. Who knows? And I think the defense is going to have to, I thought the real problem in 2023, when they just went straight into the ground after a great start, was that the defense got to the point where it couldn't stop anything. And the offense then got the idea that it had to score every time it had the ball, and you couldn't, you had to take chances and do stupid things to try to get a touchdown every time you had a possession. I don't think they play well in that mode. I think they're a team that plays from ahead, and I think the defense is going to have to get its feet under it pretty quickly here and be something like it was down the stretch last year and at the end of the season last year. I don't think they're putting a lot of stress on that passing game early might not be a good idea. They haven't really played together. They didn't get a preseason game together. Guys
right.
have heard A.J. Brown hasn't practiced.
I've been saying that all summer. John tells me I shouldn't worry at all, but Jalen and
from
AJ
a health
haven't looked much
standpoint,
together this summer.
I've also said they'll probably be uneven early in the season, like they were last year.
Yeah.
But
they really were.
term,
2-2, and everybody was really ticked off.
It didn't look good.
Even after that week, the bye and then the game against the Browns, where they just barely beat the Browns.
That was the Sirianni spiel with
Nick
the crowd.
brought his kids to the press conference, and we were all ready. We
trying to hide from Mike Seals,
torches and pitchforks
buddy
out
Mike
that
Seals.
day. But that's just they played 21 games last season. That's something that just sort of, when I sort of pan back, it boggles my mind. 21 games. That's.
Well, you know what? You know about that? I'm glad you brought that up. At Les Bowen, make sure you follow Les on the X platform. Read him at PHLY Sports, doing a great job there. You bring that up because I got to training camp this year, Les, and I thought Saquon Barkley was going to be on a milk carton. I thought we wouldn't see him until September 4th, and he got the ball all the time, like way more than last year in training camp. And I'm like, what is going on here? What is going on?
Yeah. But you didn't see A.J. Brown for the last 3 weeks.
No, that's true. And Devontae, it was almost, they were almost sort of when Devontae was feeling a little bit something, he sat for 5 days, and then A.J. was feeling something, and Devontae came back, and then he sat. They always had one of them, but
and that's everybody knows it's not any great secret. That's the bugaboo when you're the defending Super Bowl champions. You have the short off season. You played 21 games, and there's going to be guys are going to go down, and you're not going to have the continuity that you really want. Usually, sometimes teams get around that, but it's rare. It really is.
Yeah, guy we never talk about is Jalen Hurts. He's rock steady. I thought a lot of people said, because God bless Elliott, our buddy Elliott Shore Parks, but a lot of people, and Elliott deserves credit because people around the league, I find, are now doing training camp statistics. But God. I can't tell you exactly.
The NFL account is posting out training camp stats.
I can't tell you how meaningless they are, but at the same time, I think people look at it and say, well, Jalen wasn't as good this year. I think it was better. I think it's his best offseason. I think he's become a good practice player. I would always say, Les, a lot of what Jalen does well doesn't translate to practice because they're blowing plays dead, and he would get frustrated. You remember early, he would get frustrated. They'd blow a play dead, and he'd be like, slam the ball down. Now he's become a good practice player. I think he's going to have his best season. He might not win the Super Bowl, but I think he's going to have his best season. I don't even worry about that guy anymore.
Yeah, I don't worry. I mean, yeah, he's so rock solid, up here and in here that you just don't you don't have the concerns that you have with other people, when it comes to him. Money, fame, any of that stuff. It's he's still the same guy, and I appreciate that very much.
I agree, and they might need a different version of him this year, Les, to as we just talked about, if that defense isn't as good. Les, appreciate it coming in. Last comment from you before we let you run is, what is your expectation for this team this year? Is it NFC title game? Is it Super Bowl? What is the expectation? Because I happen to think, Les, it's changed not only from a fan base perspective or a media perspective, but from inside as well. Internally, I think their expectations are through the roof, which is a good thing, but can also be tough to live up to. What are your expectations for this team?
Well, no Eagles team has come off a Super Bowl appearance and had a good season ever. I keep that in mind, but I also think this is the best. The team that won the Super Bowl this time was the best Eagles team, and it's still very, very good. And I won't be shocked if they're in the Super Bowl again this year. I'm not counting on it, but I think they're as good as anybody. I don't look at any other team and say, oh, well, I don't know how they're going to beat this team. Right now, that my expectation is as high as it can get. I don't see failure. I mean, I know they have a tough early schedule, and that could really be a problem in terms of, winning the top seed and stuff like that, because you pile up a few losses early and it's, then you're up against it in terms of that stuff. But I expect a really good team, a team that will be there in the playoffs, and a team that will win playoff games.
Good stuff. Les, thanks for joining in today, man. We appreciate it. Make sure you guys follow him at Les Bowen, one of the best followers on X. We appreciate you, Les, for doing it today. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. All right, brother?
Good to talk to you guys. Take care.
Thanks, bud.
There's Les Bowen joining us here on Birds 365. Great stuff from Les there. Johnny Mack, always good to get a guy who's been around a lot of football, a lot of training camps, a lot of years around the league to get his perspective on where this team is August 26th.
Yeah, kind of. I'm the same way. I'm like, they're in the conversation. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're back in the Super Bowl, but there's a lot of hurdles, man. A lot of hurdles you got to overcome as the reigning champions. Playing so much is one of them, and coming back after the short off season is always difficult. Think about the head start everybody else gets, if you don't make the playoffs,
Right.
and that is you're incrementally eliminated. But that's part of it. Injuries are always the biggest part of it, but that's any season. So that's something you can't really, as we said, you can't legislate, but you also can't worry about, because that's the same for everybody. You saw it with Detroit. Disappointing for them. I mean, they had a great season. I think it would have been that would have been the game of the year, the heavyweight, but a healthy Detroit team against Philadelphia, wherever it was, divisional round, NFC champ, however it fell, that would have been the game of the year. Never came to fruition because they just got too many injuries and couldn't persevere. And that's part of the luck part of the equation, which people don't like to talk about, but it's a real thing.
No doubt.
Now that Jeremy Fowler was the one tweeting about Zadarius Smith, I'm like, yeah, bring him in. If worst comes to worst, I mean, that's not what you want, but at his age, but similar to what I said about Von Miller, who's even better in Washington, but he's even older. I think Zadarius is 32 or 33. But he can rush the passer.
We'll see what they end up doing there. I do think the defensive things are interesting because everybody, John, that has been around football for a long time that we brought on this show has pointed out that it's, and it's very obvious. It's not like they're uncovering some novel thing here, but the defense is going to be the catalyst this year. I mean, the offense didn't change much, and the defense, how good they were last year, allowed them to play the game the way that they did. How much does it change? How much are they required to do something different this year in order to have the same level of success? That's going to be the big question, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it shakes out, how it plays out.
Yeah, and I think New Orleans might be the winner. I think they just made their cuts. No, I take it back. All right. It's always nice when somebody jumps the gun but it was just explaining what has to happen. So I take it back. False news, fake news.
Fake
Right off
news.
the bat. I thought they were the winner. I like to point out the winner of getting down to 53 the quickest.
Is there an advantage to that? I don't know if
no. I just think it's. I think there's a lot of nonsense about waiting to the final seconds as opposed to just getting it out there. But I digress.
Yeah, no doubt. I do like the perspective that you guys share on Jalen Hurts. Just like, even Les is like, I just don't worry about that guy, because of the internals. And I think that's a big thing. I mean, there's not many quarterbacks I think you could say that about, especially internally, especially the intangibles that we've talked about with him for so many years. But I'm optimistic on him this year. And you tell me you think he's going to have one of his best seasons ever. I think that's going to be good to see, man. I can't wait to see what Jalen's able to do this year. But I think a lot of the success this year will fall back on his shoulders once again, which isn't a bad thing. It's just kind of the circumstance.
Well, yeah, I'm very comfortable saying I think he's going to have a better season than last year from an individual standpoint. I don't know if it's going to be looked at like that because that'll result because he won the Super Bowl last year. And I think too many people conflate that, which I talk about all the time. But as Les pointed out so eloquently, this is a complimentary game, man. And you and I have talked about it all the time. There isn't much difference between the 2023 Eagles offense and the 2024 Eagles offense from the standpoint of efficacy. It looked a little bit different because you had Saquon versus just a good running back the year prior. But again, number eight, they were effective. They had a bunch of good players, great offensive line, good quarterback play, tremendous receivers, Pro Bowl running back. The difference was the defense was awful in 2023, as Les pointed out. What does that do? That puts more pressure on the offense to take chances, be able to have to score more. Whereas 2024, number one defense in the NFL, keeping forget out of the end zone.
I wonder what the time, John, is, how many minutes the Eagles spent last year playing from behind. It can't be a lot.
Not a lot. That's the whole point. Now, everybody, to Les's point, they want to play everybody wants to play from the lead. It's much easier to play from the lead. And that's why everybody wants to play from the lead. But they accomplished it for the vast majority of the year. So, yeah, the complementary aspect of this game, which Nick Sirianni talks about all the time to his credit, is overlooked a lot of the time. There's a lot of vacuums in this league, whether it comes to trades or personnel moves. Everybody looks at it in that little vacuum. Same thing. When the offense is on the field, vacuum. When the defense is on the field, vacuum. It's not a vacuum. The way they perform special teams as well affects the other groups. And that's why the Eagles are so focused on complimentary football all the time.
One super chat, John, then we'll let you get out of here. Jason A-Team checking in. What's up, A-Team? Appreciate you, brother. He says they seem to be cautious with AJ and Smitty and wanted to see the depth at wide receiver with Jalen in case anyone goes down. Jalen needs more rapport with wide receiver 3, 4, and 5. I don't disagree with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that comes with it. Obviously, Jahan Dotson got here very late. and you'll probably see the same thing with John Mechie this year, getting here late. If he does have to play, chemistry is a thing that develops over time, basically with quarterbacks and receivers. With AJ and Devontae, again, they're not making up injuries. They were dealing with injuries. But, with their great players, and those are two of their great players, they're very cautious. And if they're not 100%, they're going to keep them out of practice. I don't think it had to do anything with looking at other players. If they were healthy, they would have been out there, and they wouldn't have been looking at those other players. That's a silver lining to get more first-team reps for Dotson. And even over the summer, Terrace Marshall would get some. He's going to get waived. Elijah Cooks would get some. Darius Cooper. A bunch of guys got first-team reps that wouldn't have gotten first-team reps. So that's a silver lining, but certainly not a plan, I would say, from the Eagles.
Good stuff. 18, appreciate the super chat. Johnny Mac, your final thoughts on this Tuesday edition cut down day today. John, I presume I'll be talking to you again later on today, my friend.
Yeah, we're going to be down there. Howie's going to talk just a little bit after 4.
You are going down there though.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, little after 4, typically right away. He talks to us after. Hopefully they'll give it to 1 year. Was it last year? We didn't even have the cuts. And they're going to start the press conference. And we're like, hey, yeah, could you let us know who got cut?
Yeah, right. We don't have questions until we know who got cut, for crying out loud.
So anyway, yeah. So that's always interesting. But yeah. So Howie will talk today. Nick will be there as well, obviously. But Howie will get the majority of questions. And don't take that as a slight to Nick Sirianni. But yeah, plenty of news coming today.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. John, appreciate you doing it today, brother. As always, great show. We'll talk to you later on today. Good stuff, my friend.
All right. Thanks, all.
All right, there's Johnny Mac. John McMullen here on Birds 365. Appreciate him checking in today. Appreciate him joining the show today. Les Bowen today was great as well, so always good to talk to Les.